Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're cutting right through the cheap Hollywood myths, the science fiction and those pop culture ghost stories, to look at a strictly documented, empirical historical record. We're venturing into an unsolved mystery that actually induces a creeping dread that's far stranger and honestly infinitely more terrifying than any embellished legend you've ever heard. We are looking at the raw, verified facts of the Bermuda Triangle, anchored entirely by the chilling reality of December 5, 1945, the day 5 US Navy Avenger torpedo bombers just literally vanished into thin air.
So I want you to imagine the static, right? The crackle of a military radio, and the creeping realization of these pilots understanding that a totally routine training mission has suddenly become a fight for their lives. We don't know where we are. It looks like we are entering whitewater. I mean, just sit with the sheer sensory panic in those words for a second. This isn't a line from some movie script. This is a real, timestamped transmission from a United States Navy flight leader whose squadron was wildly off course. It captures the exact moment a mundane afternoon morphed into an absolute nightmare.
Section 1. Into the whitewater. The disappearance.
Now, before we get into the granular details here, we really have to understand the broad scope of this enigma. We're talking about an empty, vast stretch of ocean that birthed a modern legend. But our focus today is entirely on the raw, chronological nightmare of the event that basically started it all, the loss of Flight 19. Let's ground ourselves in the physical, historical reality of this moment. Before the myths of aliens or Atlantis or, magnetic vortexes completely took over the public consciousness, there were simply 14 men flying 5 heavily armed Avenger bombers out of the Naval Air Station in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. These were real men, in real machines, flying into a very real patch of the Atlantic.
Section 2. Navigation problem number 1. A routine mission.
You know what makes this tragedy so haunting? It's the sheer banality of the mission. This wasn't some incredibly dangerous combat patrol in hostile skies. This was a perfectly routine 2-hour and 40-minute training mission. And the flight leader, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, was a combat-experienced veteran with 2,500 hours of flight time under his belt. He knew exactly what he was doing. The flight plan itself was just a simple triangle. Step 1, depart Fort Lauderdale at 2:10 p.m. Step 2, practice low-level bombing runs at Hen and Chicken Shoals. Step 3, turn north over Grand Bahama Island. And Step 4, fly southwest straight back to base. It was supposed to be a totally straightforward afternoon over the water, until absolutely everything suddenly went inexplicably wrong.
Section 3. Complete directional disorientation. Losing Flight 19.
All right, let's put on our forensic investigator hats for a moment. We're going to trace the suspenseful tick-tock of the afternoon, documenting this flight's terrifying descent into doom as the weather aggressively turned and the skies darkened. So at 3:40 p.m., another pilot in the area hears the first sign of trouble over the radio. I don't know where we are. We must have got lost after that last turn. By 4 p.m., the weather severely deteriorates, visibility drops to just 10 to 12 miles, and the sea becomes violently rough with these massive whitecaps. At 4:28 p.m., the Rescue Task Unit actually suggests another plane take the lead, but no one does. And by 6:04 p.m., the flight leader is hopelessly confused. He's frantically hopping from course 030 back to 090, then 270, completely incapable of figuring out if he's over the Gulf of Mexico or the Atlantic Ocean. You can just feel the immense suspense building as time ticks on against their dwindling fuel supply.
Listen to the genuine panic in this documented transmission from Lieutenant Taylor. Both my compasses are out and I am trying to find Fort Lauderdale. I am sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down. Really think about the sensory details of that moment. These pilots are completely, utterly disoriented. They're staring down at wildly spinning compasses inside the cockpit while these storm clouds aggressively darken the horizon all around them. Taylor mistakenly believed the small islands he was passing over were the Florida Keys, when tracking data strongly suggested he was actually over the Bahamas. Because of this fatal, total directional disorientation, he was essentially flying them further and further out into the endless void of the Atlantic, completely blind.
Now, this is where the official military records get genuinely eerie. We're talking about documented anomalies found in declassified Navy documents. First, an unidentified trembling voice is heard breaking through the radio static, stating, "We're completely lost." Second, Lieutenant Taylor actually asked the duty officer to be excused from this specific flight that very morning, without giving any reason, but his request was denied. And perhaps most baffling, a bearing discrepancy logged at 7:04 p.m. was flagged by a watch officer, yet it was never publicly explained in the initial Board of Investigation transcripts. I want to maintain a very grounded tone here, guys, because these aren't campfire ghost stories. These are official, documented facts that simply refuse to align with logic.
Section 4.
The Doomed Rescue Mission, a compounding tragedy.
We now arrive at a compounding tragedy that popular accounts and movies routinely gloss over, or honestly just omit entirely. Yet it is absolutely vital to understanding the sheer scale of this mystery. The Navy desperately dispatched a Martin PBM Mariner flying boat, which is this massive seaplane carrying heavy rescue equipment, into the darkened Atlantic to find Flight 19. It launches at 7:27 p.m., they check in with the tower at 7:30, and then, well, a merchant tanker captain reports seeing a massive fireball fall from the sky. Pools of oil are found on the turbulent surface, but there is zero wreckage. Within 3 minutes of checking in, the rescue plane vanishes into a mid-air explosion. And here is a terrifying historical detail. The grim facts of this vanished rescue mariner were kept heavily restricted, documented in a parallel Board of Investigation's classified annexes, which weren't even declassified at the National Archives until 1996.
13. That is the number of men aboard that Mariner flying boat. I kind of just want to let that stark death toll sit in silence for a moment. 13 more men, dispatched to save 14 lost souls, vanished into thin air, leaving absolutely nothing behind but an oil slick that quickly dissipated in the rough seas.
Section 5. Causes or reasons unknown. The search fails.
Let's widen the narrative lens back out to the devastating aftermath, because the terrifying scale of this failure is exactly what birthed decades of supernatural speculation. The chilling reality here is the absolute lack of empirical evidence despite massive search efforts. Back in 1945, they launched the largest peacetime naval search in American history. Over 300 boats and aircraft scanning 250,000 square miles for 5 days. Nothing. Decades later, the 1986 Challenger space shuttle sonar sweeps mapped the ocean floor. Nothing from Flight 19. We saw a massive 1991 NUMA expedition led by Clive Cussler, and later a 2017 deep scan sonar pass. Each time, searchers utilized incredibly advanced deep-sea tech in a corridor whose depth and sediment conditions absolutely should have preserved identifiable debris. And yet, the ocean yielded nothing.
The official conclusion is almost as disturbing as the event itself. Initially, the Navy Board of Inquiry blamed the flight leader, Lieutenant Taylor. But after his mother vehemently protested that there was no evidence, no bodies, and no planes, the Navy actually amended the permanent record. Their final official stance: we are not able to even make a good guess as to what happened. Let that genuine bewilderment sink in for a second. The greatest military on Earth officially recorded the loss as causes or reasons unknown.
When we finally contrast these sensationalized myths with the chilling facts, I think the true horror really reveals itself. While embellished myths point to alien abductions, claims that the planes flew off to Mars, or strange magnetic vortexes, the verified official record shows 27 total lives lost, 6 aircraft gone, causes unknown, and 0 wreckage. Sure, human error, getting lost, running out of fuel, or maybe a mechanical failure on the rescue plane, can easily explain a crash. But human error alone does not satisfyingly explain a 0 wreckage outcome, despite 80 years of advanced scanning in a seabed that should have flawlessly preserved the metal.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. How can 6 military aircraft and 27 men vanish so completely, so totally, that 80 years of continuously scanning the ocean floor yields nothing but absolute silence? The verified, documented truth of the Bermuda Triangle doesn't need aliens or sea monsters to be frightening. The empirical record is vastly more terrifying than any fiction. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning what lies beneath the surface.